this video, I'm showing you 7 quick and easy things you can do to become a better controller player. The very first tip that'll take you the furthest is that you should use claw grip or paddle. Now, before you take it the wrong way, I'm not saying that players that don't use claw or paddles can't be good at the game. 2 really good pro players that don't use either is Ocus and Elite Gold. However, of the top 25 controller players that I have listed here, 12 play claw, 11 use paddles, and only those 2 don't use either. So it's pretty obvious that all of the best players in Fortnite use either claw or paddle. And if you're not aware of what those are, claw is simply just a different way to hold your controller. Most players play right claw, which means their right index finger is placed over the top of the face buttons, and it can easily click any single one of these 4 buttons as well as the touchpad. This is useful because it means your right thumb can always stay on the right analog stick, which is super important for a game where you need to be constantly aiming and moving. The other popular claw option is double claw, which is basically the same thing, but it's that grip on both sides. Players that use this grip can click literally any button on the controller without ever moving their hands off the analog stick. If you don't want to use claw grip, which is understandable because neither did I, another option for you, which is the option that I opted for, is paddles. Unlike claw, paddles are not free. However, there are some great reasonably priced paddles options, like the $30 DualShock 4 back button attachment, or my personal favorite is the $28 4 paddle Collective Mind Strike Pack Eliminator. They actually make it for both the PS4 and Xbox One controllers, but unfortunately for you PS5 players, there's not that many options. The 2 paddles attachments I've tried for PS5 is the $45 Extreme Rate 4 paddle kit, which is actually great if you're good with the electronics because your controller will look like this trying to install it. Then I've also tried the $25 lever back, which is not really optimal, but it'll definitely get the job done. And I'll be the first to say that transitioning to either claw or paddles is not easy at all. But after a good week or 2 of practice, I can almost guarantee that you will be better than you were without it. The second tip is that people enjoying this video should subscribe. If you feel like you're getting any sort of value out of this, just quickly giving that subscribe button a little click helps me get that much closer to 100k, which I'm so excited for. Now, the real second tip piggybacks off the first, and that's that you don't actually need anything to be good at the game. Literally, the only thing you need is a standard console controller. I talked about paddles, but I also talked about claw, which is completely free and doesn't require any additional accessories. Sure, it's cool to have accessories like the scroll wheel or grips or control freaks or trigger stops, but you shouldn't think that the reason you're not a good player is because you don't have any of that. In fact, 10 of those 25 pro players still only play with a standard console controller with nothing else added. These are guys that by playing Fortnite, they've made $20,000, $60,000, a lot of them even over $100,000, and still their entire controller setup is the same one that comes default in the box with the console. For some reason, people think that there's certain accessories that you get and they just instantly make you better at the game. As someone who's tried almost every single accessory on controller, I'm here to tell you that not a single controller accessory will just make you instantly better at the game, not even the Cronus Zen. It literally all comes down to practice, and that's why the third quick tip for controller players is on how to practice properly. With practice on controller, I think that just pure edit courses and aim maps are not great for improving quickly. Those types of maps are maybe good for like adjusting to new binds, or maybe to use as a quick warm-up when you first get on, but for actual practice, the main map that I use is Finest 1v1 Realistic. I think a good controller practice map includes a few things. Number 1 is that it needs matchmaking for real players that you're going against because they'll have real player movement and will act the same as real players in game. The second thing is that a good practice map should be fast-paced and full of action. So like Zone Wars is not the best practice because if you die early, you have to wait a while before you even get into the next round. However, in something like the Realistics map, the fight ends and you're literally starting a new one within 10 seconds. And then 3, I think good practice maps should be somewhat realistic to the actual game. Fighting players with rocket launchers and miniguns with unlimited mats can be fun, but it's not something that would actually happen. Good practice maps should include only the same guns that are in the main game modes and a cap on mats, so this will put you in situations with maybe low ammo and no maps, and you have to practice it, because that's something that will actually happen to you in a real game. The fourth quick tip for controller players is honestly kind of ironic coming from me, but it's to get good controller settings and then stay on them. Lots of pros have already talked about this, and it's true. Using the same settings as the best players will not give you the skill of the best players. This means that switching every single month to the new best controller player settings is actually hurting you rather than helping you. After using settings for so long, you build muscle memory on them, and what I mean by muscle memory is your thumb knows exactly the path you need to move to make any specific edit. Your thumb knows exactly how to move when you're tracking someone. All that is muscle memory built that changes based on your settings, and so when you reset the settings, you're literally resetting that muscle memory. This is why you should make it a point to just not touch your settings unless you feel like you need to slightly adjust something because it's holding you back. back. With this being said, there are still some people out there that are just on horrendous settings. Like, people in my comments come in and say their edit sense is maxed out, or they use like 70% on look sense, and those types of settings make it very difficult to be good at the game. So if you need a good base settings to stay on and sort of work from, these right here are my favorite settings and the settings that I plan on staying on for a while. Quick controller tip 5 is to be cautious with your crosshair placement on both edits and shots. Your crosshair is the little reticle in the middle of your screen that you use to either aim or use it to select the tiles on your edit, use it to decide where you want builds to place. It's important to understand where this is, especially during edits and shots, because it can make all the difference in fights. An example of good crosshair placement is if you have a player box and you want to make an edit on them, don't drag the edit away from the player, because then when you confirm the edit, you're right here and you have to drag back to the player. Instead, you can drag the edit in the opposite direction, so when you confirm the edit, your crosshair is already lined up. A lot of times, mouse and keyboard players specifically can get away with this because they're able to just quickly flick over and hit their shots, but on controller, it's a lot harder to flick. So you should base your specific edits that you do and your specific tile pass that you do to complete the edit based on where the player that you're fighting is. So if they're in a box, this isn't even necessarily a good edit. Because he's in the middle, like right side of the box, I'd probably want to make a top right edit, but I also don't want to go this way because you see I end here and I'd have to come all the way back down. Instead, my top right edit should look like this, and I literally end and I'm right here on his head. And similarly, when you're the one jumping, you want to have a consistent time where you shoot. What I found that I typically do is I shoot like right as I'm coming down from the peak of my jump. This makes a big difference if you shoot like right when you jump versus when you jump in the air, and you can line up a way better shot when you shoot like right at the end of your peak. This is a really subtle tip that you might not even notice, but it is a really great way to get better fast. Going straight into tip 6, you can get so much better just by watching pro controller players stream. Now, I'm specifically saying stream because YouTube videos only show highlights, but when you watch like Twitch streams, the little details like crosshair placement are so important in fights, and there's a ton of specific little things that these pro players do that you might have never even thought to do. Another just really simple box fighting thing I learned from watching Reet is you can fake a wall edit by editing a single window, but you're not actually in the view of the window. The player usually tries to react super fast and shoot, but a lot of times they end up shooting the wall, which breaks it, and then you have a clear shot back on them. There are hundreds of simple things like this you start to pick up on by watching a stream. A few people that I like to watch is Reet, Playify, Pump, G Money, and Day, but you can pretty much pick any pro controller player to watch and you'll learn stuff. Quick controller tip 7 is to realize the advantages that you have on controller and play to your strengths. On controller, your big advantages can be aim and movement, so focus on trying to be consistent with everything. Don't try to be a flashy player that hits flick shots and has crazy looking builds. Save that for the mouse and keyboard players that can do that stuff way better. What I try to do when playing is have practical builds and edits and take quality shots. This means that I don't hit a ton of crazy clips, but I almost always hit an edit when I need to, and I almost always hit a quality shotgun shot. I don't try to get in many box fights because without scroll wheel reset, controller players are at a disadvantage. I also don't try to fight with low ground peaks because I can't flick well. So I try to avoid situations like those and play to the strengths that I have as a controller player. If this video helped you, please be sure to drop a like and subscribe. Also, feel free to use code Carter2K in the item shop. Every supporter is greatly appreciated. So thanks, and I hope to catch you guys in the next one.